Right, okay, let's try it again and see whether it works a bit better in a recorded fashion. Anyway, feel free to email me if you've got any questions. Apologies that it didn't work before. I had some disasters before and I was trying to figure out what was going wrong. And it seems that there's not enough data going through to YouTube to keep the video going. Uh, I'm not sure whether it's a problem with the internet connection, bearing in mind that with the situation at the moment, a lot of people are working from home, streaming from home, and so on, and it may be that the internet in general is getting a little bit congested. So this might be the problem. Before this week, I didn't have a problem. I had some problems yesterday as well. So apologies for that. Anyway, I'm just sort of trying to get you to understand what I'm looking for the report and for how to write up the report. Obviously, you can. I'm going to try and keep it brief and short and sweet, and you can ask me questions, and I'll get back to you. And if necessary, produce another video if it's of any help, or if it's of help for more than just yourself. Okay, we had a look at why reports are necessary. So you have to make a business case for new equipment, feedback on business or production processes, might be health and safety issues. So you've got an accident which has happened and you have to introduce new procedures. It might be about marketing. So you're selling a product, maybe a change of working procedures within your company. So that would be, possibly marketing to some extent. And again, I've seen a lot of you guys have done really interesting projects, even though there's not a definitive product at the end of it. So there is there's a bit of um, yeah, like a new product or a new idea which is there to sort of change the way you do manufacturing. I can sort of think about two or three guys who have done this. What else have we got? We may have litigation, so legal issues and court evidence has to be portrayed, and then obviously it should be portrayed in a neutral fashion. So if you, I don't know if you watch forensics or things like that, they would create a report, and the report is completely aloof from the actual crime that's happened. So there's no emotion in it. It's totally objective. It looks at this is the evidence. What does the evidence tell us? But it doesn't get itself concerned about the victim or the perpetrator. It just talks about the evidence itself. That's what the report should be. It should be fairly objective, fairly neutral. It should not be filled with emotion. So I know a lot of you guys, you couldn't finish your project because your boss said, "Oh, we can't carry on with this. We've got more important stuff to do," and it can be very frustrating, especially when you've spent a lot of time on your work, and then you're getting told, "No, you can't do this. You have to do something else." So that's really a problem, and it's easy to put this in the report. You can put it in your appendices, and you can vent your anger if you wish to do so, but don't do it in the body of the report, the actual report. And then obviously you use the report for the project. Okay, I mentioned this many times before, and let me just go back. Yeah, um, don't use the term I. Yeah, a report is written in the third person. And again, if you use the appendices, and again, I know that some of you have started writing up stuff with using the term I, like I did this, I did that, and then I did this, and so on. And that's okay, but it has to be in the appendix, not in the body of the report. The body of the report is to be written in the third person. So don't use I. I just goes out of it. The only place in the report where you can use I or we is when you do the recommendations. You don't have to use it, but you can use it. And again, it is obvious who has written the report because your name and your credentials are going to be on the title page. Title page says Michael so and so. This is my position, and this is the date when I've written this, and all this information is there. And then possibly credentials or whatever you have as well to put a bit more weight on your opinion or the findings of the report. And it could, I mean, in this instance, it's just you for the project report, but in another report, there could be several people who are feeding their knowledge into this report. So you would have maybe 3, 4, 5 people mentioned on the title page, and they are the authors of the report. But there's no I in the report other than the recommendations, no we either. It's important that you keep it concise and to the point, trying to make sure that that is the case. Sort of don't elaborate on anything. You can elaborate in the annex or the appendix, but you don't elaborate in the report. The report itself is just very clear and concise, clean cut and to the point. Any long documents, anything, belong to the appendix. I mentioned before, when you do the report, you might end up with about 100 pages. Doesn't mean that you have to have 100 pages, but in the appendix you would stick, your... so I'm talking not just a report, but the whole work, the project might be 100 pages. So anything you've done, so you've got the logbook, you've got the SWOT analysis for whatever project you want to go for. You've possibly got a feasibility study for your merit. You've got, if you go for the distinction, the ethics stuff. Yeah, all this stuff would wander somewhere in the appendix, and there would be referenced and referred to from inside the report, but they wouldn't be part of the report. And so you get possibly loads and loads of humph together, loads and loads of pages, and it might even be 100 pages. I'm not saying it has to be. It might just be 20 or 10 or whatever, but it could be. Yeah. And also you might have data sheets. Yeah? So if you print them out from somewhere, that on its own might be 10, 20 pages straight away. Yeah? And you just stick them in the appendix. So people can get a good idea of what you're trying to do and what you've done so far, or what you were aiming for if the project isn't complete. The body of the report itself is probably 10 pages. Yeah? And when I say this, it's a little bit, it might still sound an awful lot, but you look at the title page, you look at the contents page, and then you look at the introduction and the executive summary, and you're looking between 3 and 4 pages already. Right at the end, you've got the conclusion and the recommendations, which should typically be 1 page. Then you've got your references and bibliography, which might be 1 or 2 pages, and you might have a glossary as well, which is another page, where difficult words, which, for example, I, as a non-specialist as far as mechanical engineering is concerned, would very much rely upon. So that might be in the end. So you've only got 5 pages or something for the report body. Yeah. And I'm not restricting you. I'm not limiting you. And I'm not pushing you to, if the report is sufficient, if you've done enough, you've done enough. That's okay for me. The grading is criteria based. It's not based on bulk or on prettiness or anything like that. It's criteria based. You hit the criteria, you get the pass, the merit, the distinction. Yeah. Okay, right, let's move on. What is a report? I've got the slide here. Again, you've seen these slides before. I just want to reiterate what is important at this point in your project and how to do this. Yeah. Okay, we've got report, systematic, well-organized document which analyzes a subject or problem, which may include recording of a sequence of events, interpreting the significance of these events or facts, discussion of the outcomes of a decision or a course of action, making educated conclusions on an event that had occurred, recommendations for the future. Okay, so right, I'm just going to leave it on its own. It just gives you a little bit of a guidance what to put in, but most of you've started off somewhere, you've had an idea, you started working on it, you run into a couple of problems, you resolve the problem. Some projects were brought to completion, some projects weren't brought to completion, and it's not a problem, providing you can give me the reasons why it didn't come to completion. Because you had a plan, the plan clearly set and stated, and it should state, this project is going to be completed before the Easter break, but it isn't. And it's not a problem, just tell me why, what went wrong, and what could you do in the future to try and make it work? Okay, right, just like a deductive report, looked at this before, title page, executive summary, introduction, discussion, conclusions, references, and then we've got the definition for discursive writing. Look at the second definition here, and it says based on conscious use of reasoning rather than on intuition. So again, it just talks about your report. It should be objective. There should be no opinion in it. It should just be matter of fact. This is what's happened. This is what I would try to do, or this is what was tried to be done. Take away the I. This is what was tried. this is what happened. Decisions were made to stop the project for X, Y, Z reason, or to postpone it, and then this is what came out of it. Yeah? And that's sort of just matter of fact all the way through. And the way you should do this is you should look at the report and manage the report from a bird's eye perspective. Just distance yourself from the report itself, even though you've done it, or from the project itself, even though you've done the project. And then from that perspective, start writing the project. A little bit like standing well aloof of it, being totally detached from whatever went on. And I mean, it can be quite annoying, that your boss told you to not carry on with the project, if that has happened. But you just stand aloof from it. You don't criticize your boss. You don't have any nasty words for him or anything like that. You just describe what has happened and why it was stopped, or why this or that, or whatever was done, and how you moved it on, or what you did to try and deal with the situation. But again, don't use the term I. Use, it was decided to do X, Y, Z. Talk about yourself in the third person. Right, this is the main slide, which I want to reiterate one more time. These are the sections of the report. You start off with the title page. You've got the name of the report, the date. Also make sure you put your own name on it. Maybe a fancy picture, some arts, whatever, some artistic stuff, whatever you want to do. But there shouldn't be too much information on it, too little information as well. So the title should pretty much tell me, as somebody who doesn't know what you've been doing, what you've been getting up to, what this is all about. Again, discursive means it should just be objective, totally detached from the, or emotionally detached from whatever you were doing, and it should be factual. Yeah, that's all it is, just factual, discursive, down to the point. Whatever happened. Then we've got the table of contents, and this is what to find in the report. Ideally, I would suggest you leave the table of contents right to the end when you're done with the report. You don't start off with it. And then we've got summary. It should be the executive summary. And again, it depends what book you're reading. Some people say, oh, you need to have like 10% or 20% of your report length. That should be your executive summary. Pretty much, if I don't want to read through the whole report, this is the way to imagine it. The executive summary should give me an idea of what is this report all about, what is this project all about, what happened during the project, and what was the outcome. Yeah. And I'm not interested in the nitty-gritty stuff, but I'm just interested in the general stuff of this project, and that's what needs to be in the executive summary. You should be able to squeeze it on, ideally on one A4 page maximum. Yeah, that's what I would like to see. Again, I'm not going to penalize you if you go over 2 A4 pages, or if it's only a quarter A4 page. If it fits in, it fits in. It's not a problem. But don't let the executive summary be another mini report or something. It should be just a summary of whatever was going on. Again, it should be for information. It should be discursive. Should be factional, impersonal. Use of third-person pronouns and passive verbs. Yeah. So passive verbs is what is a passive verb? How shall I describe it? Yesterday. Yesterday I fed the cat. Yeah, that would be direct. If I wanted to keep the I out and I wanted to use it in passive, and I could say yesterday the cat was fed. Yeah, that would be the passive way of describing something. Okay, what next have we got? We've got the introduction. I always thought the introduction was before the executive summary, or in this instance it's the other way around. I'm not too flustered about it, which way around you do it, and I guess it depends which book you're reading as well on how to write a report. Introduction is just a background problem, the problem approach, definition of special words used in the project report. Again, it's to inform, it's discursive, and it should be factual. Third person only. Then you've got something which is called methods. Methods are procedures which led to the findings. Another term which you might find is the specifications, which need to be in there. So what is this all about? What are you trying to achieve? Where is this supposed to lead up to? What are you going to do? So that's the sort of thing you would write in there. And then you've got the biggest part, which is the findings. Yeah. So you are then in the report, write what has been happening throughout the project. What did you find? How did you carry on? What went okay? What went wrong? Yeah. So that's the type of stuff you should cover, and that's probably the biggest part. That's the bulk of the report. Yeah. So, for example, you could say you ordered the products, then the products came a little bit late. Everything was a little bit delayed, but you tried to catch up with time. Then you found out this and that, and then you had to change the project a little bit into this direction. And then right at the end, this was the outcome. The outcome was almost like you expected it, but maybe one or two things could have been done better. Then you come up with a conclusion, and the conclusion has to be drawn from the findings. It's very, very important. So make sure whatever conclusion is actually shown in your report write-up, the findings. And so again, there should be to inform, there should be discursive, third person, factual, impersonal, passive verbs. All this comes in there for the findings and for the conclusion. Right. Let's go through. Drawn from the findings. Okay, to convince, you should make an argument. It seems, the result indicates, it is probable that, and so on. Right at the end is recommendations. The recommendations is stuff that should be done in the future. That's the only time when you can use I or we. And again, you can sort of create an argument why you think this is what should be done in the future because of, whatever went wrong. Same with your conclusion as well. You could make an argument why stuff has gone wrong, or why it went successfully, and so on. Then right at the end, you've got your bibliography and your references. Make sure that stuff in your report which has been used is found there. Also, if you do any quotes or you take any quotations from anywhere, which I don't think they really fit into that well. It's probably more in the stuff you do for the appendix, that they are properly referenced and they're in the report. Now the referencing should be Harvard referencing, and for engineering it doesn't sort of necessarily fit too well, but when you look at how to reference stuff and how to do quotations, look at Harvard referencing. If you did a course about social science or something, you would read lots of books and do lots of quotations in there and come up with your own conclusion. And then this referencing is very, very important. But since it's a project on engineering, it may come into it, may not come into it. So if you start quoting things, quickly look up what Harvard referencing is, the information that's required, and then that should go into your under references. And so you put something in quotation marks, whatever you have quoted, and then you put like a little footnote there, and in the footnote you then take it right back to the references. You write down where you got it from. So that's very, very important. Right, the same with your appendixes as well, with your appendices. So if you quote anything in your appendices, make sure it's there. There's a software which is called Turnitin. If we have to run your assignment through Turnitin, it'll look for stuff you have taken off the internet, and then there are certain percentage points when we have to bounce it back to you. And you're not, again, supposed to use plagiarism or anything like that. Since the project is about less about research, more about stuff you do, I don't think it's going to be a major issue, but it's just something to bear in mind. Okay, hope this helps. Next one. Tips for report writing: use formal language, use the correct format and structure, keep to the facts. Again, made this point earlier. Make sure your meaning is clear, use correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So that's obviously, that should happen anyway. Okay, the appendices. They're sometimes referred to also as an annex, and they're widely used to support your findings and arguments in the report. Examples may include meetings of minutes, specification of products, machinery, and so on. Appendices should be referred to in the body of the report and have to be clearly labeled. anything goes, but it needs to be relevant and linked to the report. Yeah? So that's very, very important. Make sure in your report, every appendix you've got, or every appendix you've got, you reference it inside the report. Otherwise, it doesn't really belong in there. A lot of the stuff you do for your passes, merit, and distinction, they don't really belong into the report body, but they can be used as an appendix. So that's something you can do, and you can use for that. So, for example, I should have the assignment brief in front of me, but you've got a feasibility study. The feasibility study goes into the appendix. You've got a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis ideally should be in the appendix. You've got a logbook, certainly belongs to the appendix. You've got the engineering ethics institution. If you go for a distinction, I think it's D1. Again, whatever you write for that should go into the appendix. It shouldn't be in the report body. But in the report body, you can, for example, say that the engineering ethics for this project were applied. Please refer to appendix, blah, 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 as described in there. Yeah. And that's all. That's all I need to see in the report body. And at that point, the appendix becomes relevant, and you got graded on it. Yeah. And you can go for your distinction. Right. I hope I covered everything. I think I did. Report writing for real. You will have done most of it. As I said before, all you need to do is a bit like a spider's web. It's just tie it all together, and you do this in the report. Yeah, and keep it very brief, concise, very factual. So you've got a problem description, several solutions. Okay, we had a look at that. Okay, I'm not going to go any further with the micro report. We did this in class some time ago, and I leave it at that. But when you start writing the report, I would print this slide out. So the PowerPoint presentation should be on Teams in the folder, on Microsoft Teams in the folder, so you can take it from there. And maybe print this out and just keep yourself down to the point. Now I'm going to show you the Ofcom report, which again I've shown you before, but this is sort of the format I'm looking for, and maybe makes life a lot easier on you as well if you do it in this way. Okay, let's get the Ofcom report. Right, we've got the report here. Yeah? So you've got the title page here, and you can see the title page. You get publication date as well. It's 2014, so it's quite some time ago. And again, don't worry about the contents. Ofcom is a government body, so they would adhere to all these standards. Yeah? So it's about this document. So that's a little bit. Let me just pull this page back up again. It's a bit like the introduction, I would say, about this document, like specifications. Then you've got the contents page. So they did this before the document. So anyway, contents page. It's just a very small report. It's got about 17 pages. And then it starts off with the executive summary. And a couple of things I would like to see you do. If you do them or not, it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't. But that's proper report writing. First of all, you create little sections. They should be in the bibliography as well. We've got section 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here we've got the page numbers. And you could have like section 1 is the executive summary. Let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation. So you've got section 2 is the introduction. Section 4, any methods used or the specifications of what you're trying to achieve. Then section, where was I? So that was 1, 2, 3. 4 will be your findings, 5 your conclusions, and then maybe 6 recommendations, 7 bibliography, 8 references, just as an example, okay? And, all right, let me just go back to the Ofcom report. Okay, so that's what the contents page looks like. You've got your sections there, and then you've got your sections here as well. Whether you use one color or several colors, I leave it up to you. You've got the executive summary, and you see, instead of using paragraphs, you use 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on. So if I want to, and some reports are really long, and if I want to get a colleague and ask him to look at something, all I need to say is go to 1.41 or something, 1.4.1, and then you know exactly in which part of the document you are. So you put this sectioning in there, and you've got 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and it's a bit like each paragraph you're dealing with. Okay, it's quite a long executive summary. Then we've got the background here. This might be, again, like an introduction, specifications. You don't have to call it background. In this instance, they are just looking at, what is the problem? That's a problem description. They've got this frequency band which suddenly has become available, and they want to allocate it differently to different services in the UK. So that's a background. And you can see as well, you've got this section here. This is section 2, and they've got 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. And then they subdivide it even further. They go the consultation software views on the following. And these are all the different views they were looking for. So they've got 2.3.1, 2.3.2, 2.3.3, 2.3.4, and so on. Yeah. Then they go to the next one, which is 2.4, the next subheading, and so they go all the way through. Also see, you've got some footnotes here. So they are referring to it somewhere in the document. Can't see this. So this is 4. I don't know where this are here. We've got 4. So we've got this frequency band, and they took some information. And that would be de facto your appendices. Yeah? So I would expect you to put on, please refer to Appendix 1, Appendix 2, or whatever. They just put a footnote on here and put a link here for this consultation which has taken place and where they take the information from. Okay. Then we've got 2.5, impact assessment, 2.8, equality impact assessment, and so on. Then we go to the responses to the consultation. So that's section 3, and you get the same sort of splitting up of the text. So these are people who are saying some stuff, then Ofcom responds to them. So we see all this, and this goes all the way down. And right at the end, we will get a conclusion. Right, let's move down a bit further. Okay, so we've got conclusions. Yeah. So that's section 4. We've got our conclusions here, and here we go. Quite a lot of conclusions here. Then some stacks. Next steps, and this would be possibly equivalent to recommendations. Yeah. What do you do in the future? So that would be your recommendations. Okay, so that's basically what they come up with the conclusion, and that's what they're going to be doing in the future. Okay, so you get a little bit of an idea of how to format the assignment. That's what I would like to see. And as I said before, it shouldn't be a great thing. Most of the work you've done already. Stick it in the appendix and then time together with a document like this. The document doesn't have to be mega big in size, and this time you've got now is meant to be used for this purpose. Right, I'm trying to think. I think I'm out of breath and out of steam. I think I've said everything. It's a little bit just a repetition of what we did before about reports and stuff like that. But I just want you to focus on this and look at this as an example of how to structure your report. Not to write it, but to structure it. Right. It's interesting as well. This is a government document, and found some interesting stuff in here. I'm going to show you, and then I'll finish on this. And this is put into the public, and they are big firms which have replied to that, like the Coast Guard and others. And let's have a look. And we've got one company. I don't know whether it's just a joke or whatever, but they have to not take it as a joke. Can't find him now. It's quite funny when you see that. Let me see what I can do. Can I search on here? I don't know. Let's have a look. I'm just going to see whether I can do a I didn't want this. Find. Okay. So let's have a look. There's a company. Yeah, you can see this here. There were a total of 38 responses received about CB radio and all that. And there's a company called Del Boy Enterprises, and I'm not sure whether this is real or not. And this is mentioned several times here in this document when I was reading through it. Just a little bit of funny stuff at the end. So it might just be somebody who said a joke and called himself Del Boy Enterprises, and has responded to an official government inquiry, and it's been taken on board what they said, and decisions are made based on those responses, which is quite scary in a way. Anyway, so that's a little bit about report writing. So I hope this was helpful. Feel free to email me. If necessary, I'll sort of try to make another video, and I hope you're keeping safe and you're okay. And yeah, it's a crazy time we are in. I hope it's not getting to you too much. But anyway, try and make the most of it. Make the most of it for the project as well. And then when you all come back, we'll sort it. To be fair, I mean, at this stage, if you write it all up and you submit it in electronic format, I could deal with most of it from this end anyway. Okay, anyway, have a great day, and thank you for watching this video. And I'll talk to you soon.